The Legacy Files with Grant Cameron.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I'm joined by my co-author partner, Desta Barnaby from Ontario, and I'm way on the West Coast here in Port Coquitlam, BC. And this is where God came on day 7 when he rested. This is a beautiful place. I live on top of a hill, but somebody's got to live on top of the hill. And we're going to doing the legacy files. And apparently, according to Desta, we got a lot of comments. A lot of people are watching the first couple of episodes. So let's go there, Desta. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, Grant.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we had a good so far there's a lot of people watching and a lot of people commenting, a lot of people happy that you're, I guess, probably going to be doing something more consistently here, so that's good. Yeah, do you want to say anything right off the bat about any of the comments?
Yeah, I think one of the comments you'd gotten was the idea that we might want to leave this alone and just do our own research. These guys are doing their research.
The
And
Skywatchers. So that was for the Skywatchers.
for the Skywatcher thing. So I want to make
We
a,
shouldn't be being mean to them.
yeah, and with a comment I'd make about that, that's legitimate. The only problem is that these guys have asked for peer review. Now, the peer review they want scientists to come in and verify their information, and we'll get to this in other episodes about evaluating information and how this may be sort of not the best track, that you got to watch out for sort of pitfalls, because this is the paranormal. This is not the physical world, and the paranormal can sort of morph. But if we can't, with like almost 100 years research, be part of the team that vets this, if they're going to totally ignore the UFO community, the people, I think there's going to be some trouble, because I mentioned this in a number of interviews I've done where I used to be a bartender at the Faculty Club Lounge, and you were at the university, you graduated from the University of Manitoba, and it's a big place. It's like 31,000 students or whatever, and I don't know, 1,500 professors. And so in the Faculty Club Lounge, I would have met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of academics through my career. And this included like presidents, vice presidents, presidents from other universities, and a lot of deans from the different departments of the university would come in and drink at the bar. And one of them, as I told the story, was the guy who ran plant science at the University of Manitoba. And he would sit at the bar every night for 5, 6 hours, and then he'd drink and then he'd go home. And he'd like to talk about UFOs, but he liked to play the skeptic. And at one point, I said to him, I said, "Hey, you're the head of plant science. You know how to plant a rose. You know about all about roses. What do you know about UFOs?" And he said, "Nothing." And I said, "Thank you very much." And that's the thing we got to realize, is that if you have not been in the field, if you have not looked at all the evidence, you can fall into some pretty big traps. And the one thing I mentioned to you that yesterday, I think we are talking about, and I don't know if you can see this, this is a book that was written in 1969. And this has to do with, it's a book called The Humanoids. It's a very famous book written about alien beings evaluated in the 1960s. So today, if you were to talk to an academic outside of the UFO community, you'd say, what about aliens? And they'd say, oh, there's all these stories, rumors, there's grays, there's reptilians, and there's mantids. And I maintain now, still maintain, that there was no grays before 1961, there was no reptilians before 1980, and that people got to realize this phenomena is morphing. It's changing as it goes along. So let me read to you from these are not like this was mostly the group was called APRO. So Lorenzen was writing this. Carl Lorenzen was writing this, and they had the aliens in categories, and they had different categories, almost like Skywatchers doing class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, and they're putting them into different categories. So they did the same thing with aliens in the 1960s, and the class 1. So here, let me read to you. The data contained in this category can be employed in an attempt to define the origin and the purpose of the supposed visits, but only after the material has been reviewed collectively as a search for correlations and possible invariant factors. The research is confronted with incredibly wide range of descriptions. It would seem at first glance that if our visitors had made a deliberate and concerted effort to confuse us, which is
Mhm.
exactly what I say they're doing. One meets with one-eyed giants, hairy dwarfs, robots, little men in luminous suits, blonde-haired and slanted-eyed Christ-like beings, and so on. So these are the beings they're talking about in the 1960s. And I'm writing a book called Extraterrestrial, Maybe Not, where I'm going to put an entire article. It's written by the Canadian government UFO research people, the people around the government program in Canada, and they wrote an article in the 1960s as well. And again, it was like these dwarfs and long little hairy people and stuff like this, and it's completely different than today. And that's what people have to realize, that the UFO phenomena, as you and I both know, it is going to be reflective. It's reflective of us, that it's changing. That the one that they actually referred to from the 1890s was 1890, a sighting of a 7 foot tall being in a green sweater. And so you see this thing, like it's just these bizarre things that they keep changing as we go through history, and that if you don't realize that the phenomenon is changing, and I say the same thing is happening with UFOs, because one of the things I pointed out about Skywatcher is they have 9 categories, but none of the categories, except maybe the egg category, match anything in the past. If you look at the Skinwalker Ranch, for example, they had the mean blue orbs that were attacking people. Well, there's no blue orbs here, and they have this thing at 3,000 feet that they're looking at Skinwalker Ranch, and it's sort of like an object, and they can't really see what it looks like, and they're shooting beams at it and stuff like that. Completely different thing, and it's like whatever you see. So if you're in one culture, you're going to see one thing. For example, the thing I didn't realize even till yesterday when I started reading this book was that there was no humanoid reports in North America before almost 1961. They had 12 in this whole book that they had looked at. That most of the humanoid reports with aliens where they land and then the aliens come out happened in Europe. They were all categorized by Jacques Vallée and people like that. There was really none in America, except for the contactees, and everybody rejected the contactees as being a bunch of garbage, like Adamski and all these guys. They rejected all that kind of stuff. So the American phenomena was different than the European phenomena. And there was even where Jacques Vallée was looking at it, and he wanted certain categories pulled out of it. And that's what we got to realize, is that as we go along, that unless you've got the background and the history, the fact that this is changing, that there's these different the ability to morph. And the other example that I can show, or the one I think we mentioned last time, and I'm gonna do an interview with Gerald Pratt. You remember Gerald Pratt from Liverpool? Now he's just written a book. Now he saw the hand as well. So he sent me the thing from the book where he talks about going into the seance with the medium, and the hand appearing, this hand from 100 years ago, and that you can touch it and it feels like real. And that's the whole thing, that you can, this phenomena, if it's like even one of the people that's in the one of the people that's a psychic for the Skywatcher, actually in one of the interviews, he said that he was talking to the beings, and the beings said to him, "We come from that place that you would call the afterlife." And so this is the whole thing, that you have this thing where my father, 2 days before he died, his father came to him, and he told my mother and he told my older sister. He didn't tell me. But the thing is, so did my grandfather get all his atoms and put them all the atoms together and come walking into my father's room? Because my father didn't say it was a ghost. My father didn't say it sort of looked like him. He said my father was here. And that's the whole thing, that we have to realize that this phenomena can appear as whatever it wants to appear as. And everybody knows that. The Skinwalker Ranch people warned, and Lakatsky said the same thing. If you're going to look at just UFO sightings, you're going to look at them forever and never figure anything out. This thing is way more complex. So we may not be right, but we actually have, I think, a valid reason to say be careful, that this phenomena is way more powerful than you think it is, and it has the ability to morph and appear as whatever it wants to appear as.
And of course, we're just making comments. We're just
Yeah.
having different perspectives to open up people's minds to alternative possibilities. So and because we've been studying it for so long, we have our own opinion. So this is not ever, we're not up here trying to attack anyone or say anything, but it's because of the background. We're just trying to add our little 2 cents. So of course, we want everyone to succeed, and we hope that they're going to find something good and share it in a good way. But my opinion always is that anything that's coming from intelligence is kind of sketchy to begin with, and you have to watch out for that. And that's based on everything that I've read over, decades as well. So it's just an alternate point of view. We're not trying
Yeah.
to attack them. And when I saw Ross Coulthart interview Jake Barber in a handful like months ago, 4 or 5 months ago or whenever, that whole thing started. It's fascinating. So I'm very interested, and we're obviously watching it and seeing what's going to happen and just throwing in our 2 cents.
Yeah, and then they are doing valid work. That's the idea of interchange between peer reviews, that people discuss it and go back and forth, because it continues to progress. That we learn more, you learn more, you learn more, you learn more, and eventually you get the situation where in 2017 suddenly the government says, "Oh yeah, we are investigating UFOs," and we always knew that for years and years and years, and it gets validated. And so it's important, if you get these things on TV where they are um, getting the word out, because that's what the phenomena wants. It wants you to write books. It wants to get on TV and stuff like that. That it's using this phenomena, like for example, the Skywatcher talked about the UFO sitting there hovering for 2 to 3 hours in the sky. So what's the alien doing? I mean, why are they sitting there hovering for 3 hours? They want you to see it. They want you to go, oh, let's go chase it. Let's see, are they going to come? And that's exactly what happened with the Nimitz thing, where you saw the Nimitz case, where apparently they were there for a week, hovering and sitting there for a week until finally they decided they were going to chase it. They put the F-18s up, and that's when I make this joke where the aliens say, "Hey, make some bubbles in the water. Here they come," and they go from 80,000 feet down to sea level. What's that about? Like, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? The same as the film that I saw when I first started that got me involved was a Charlie Red Star film, where it jumped from ground level to 3,000, 5,000 feet in the air in 3 frames of film. 8.25 miles away, and you look at that and you go like, wow, and drags you into the phenomena, and that's what the phenomena is doing. It wants you to. So the Skywatcher is advancing consciousness by going on TV. That people will, they may not listen to you, they're not going to watch the podcast, because 99.9% of people are just sitting there watching TV at night. Let's see what's interesting. Oh, let's look at this, and they don't realize that consciousness is rising, that they're being programmed as this thing's going on. And that's what the phenomena is doing. Is as you talk to Barbara Streisand's stepson, Chris Peters, and he told us that the phenomena told him when he encountered it was that the phenomena looks in your head and it sees what's in your head, and it is with that it builds a lesson for you. You can't build anything else. So it's using what's in your mind to project something that you will understand and accept. And so the consciousness is rising. It's rising at an incredible rate in terms of the number of times. Because I remember there'd be in the old days, it would be if you got one UFO documentary in the year, it was like, holy cow, there's UFO doc. Now it's like it's all over the TV. And that's the whole thing that Max Planck said. Because he was the father of quantum physics, and he had the same problem what we had, is that nobody believed him. He talked about this thing about the skeptics coming after him, and he said that science does not advance by trying to convince your opponent that he's wrong. It advances when your opponent dies. And this idea that one funeral at a time, science advances, and that's the way it works. Is that we'll discuss all this kind of stuff, and the young kids are sort of watching; they're not involved or whatever, and they just accept that this is reality. And that's how ideas rise. Even if you take a look at the United States of America, you take a look. Well, I remember the first year, 2015, I was at a lecture in Los Angeles. That was the first time that I saw QAnon. I was horrified. I went, who the hell are these people? I couldn't believe it. There's people standing up and cheering and screaming. I'd never heard about this before in my life. And it was just like a gong show. It was like unbelievable. And they were talking about 54,000 indictments. Trump had every Democrat was going to get arrested and stuff. And I'm going, where did this come from? And you take a look at 5 years after that, is like 50% of the people are on that wavelength. And so it doesn't matter. Consciousness will rise when people start talking about it, and people hear it and they just accept it because they don't really read, and people go on, and you can see how the United States of America has changed in 5 or 6 or 10 years completely from what it was before then. And the UFO phenomenon is doing the same thing. It's morphing based upon people putting ideas in, and it's growing, and hopefully we're learning as we go along.
I definitely agree with at least the social media, how things take off. on social media, and a lot of people, even now you could say, like my mom sends me tons of TikTok videos all the time. I don't
Yeah.
go on TikTok, but there is like people saying a lot of things about the Palladians and star seeds and Syrians and all this kind of thing. And again, 5 years ago, I think that hardly anyone would even
Yeah.
know what that was, and those people were really considered crazy. And now it's maybe softening kind of in and making more people want to believe in something good happening, and there being something, spiritual and, within our reach, and something that's looking out for us and helping us and stuff. And since these things on social media kind of take off, then I think it's kind of working through the psyches of everyone about UFOs and consciousness and spirituality and all that kind of stuff too. And just like Corey Good. So whether these things are true or not, or come out 5 years later and the people are lying, it almost doesn't even matter, because I think that it is doing exactly that, right? It's working on consciousness levels of people and trying to make people go, oh, maybe this isn't so crazy. I do kind of align with this. And then they look into something else and into something else. So whether the things are yeah, true or not, I think it's all helping, it's building. And social media is definitely a big part of it, because you're right, 10 years ago, there was almost nothing on aliens or ghosts or anything on TV, right? And now it's definitely all over the place.
Yeah, or consciousness. When I had 2012 consciousness, I mean, and at that point, I had worked on the field for 37 years, and I had I mean, as I said, I could have not spelled consciousness and couldn't have cared less. I had no idea about this consciousness thing, and I started. Then Ray Hernandez came on, and Colin Andrews had started the field, and now everybody's talking about consciousness, even when they really don't. Work on it, they know this is a key word. You got to talk about this consciousness fact in that it has something to do with UFOs. But one thing I want to read, we're going to put out a book, and it's going to involve part of the Skywatcher. And it started as an article, and it's now 40 pages. So eventually it become a work book. And I just want to talk, just mention here, and then we'll go maybe close this section. You can make a comment. We'll close for this section, but it's a chapter called "The Consciousness Component and the Trickster." And you and I both know you met George Hansen. You can maybe make a comment on that. And George Hansen wrote a book called The Trickster, which was written many, many years ago. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. And he had this way before anybody else, this idea that the phenomena, you got to watch the phenomena, that it's not exactly what you think. It's not going to be something that you can take and measure and weigh and stuff like that, that it has this ability to morph. So let me read these four quotes at the beginning of this chapter to give you the idea of what we're talking about. The first one is from George Hansen. He said, "The veil between worlds is not a curtain, but a prism that what passes through it fractures, revealing different truths to different eyes." The next one is a quote from Native American wisdom. "The trickster teaches by provoking chaos. Only when the old world shatters can we see beyond the illusion." And that's this whole idea that new ideas come in by this weird stuff that they're doing, that it shatters your illusion. You suddenly realize, I mean, if this is real, then the world is not the way we thought it was. The next one is from Jacques Vallée. And he said all these people are basically prominent people, and they're saying the same thing. Jacques Vallée says the phenomena has the ability to manipulate time and space in ways we don't understand. It behaves like a trickster, presenting itself as physical craft one day and as physical manifestations the next. And the last quote is from Jim Semivan. And Jim Semivan is one of the intelligence people that I listen to. He talks about getting the 7-hour intelligence briefing on the phenomena. And he said a lot of what he got was not that they had gotten anything on UFOs, but they had made some headway on things dealing with psychic, and that's all he would say. It has to do with psychic, but in terms of the metal and the propulsion and the crafts, they really hadn't gotten anywhere. And here's what he says: "It comes close, it teases us, it cajoles us, it lies to us, but you can never take it home to meet the parents. It won't allow you to do that." So you always got to remember that the phenomena, as almost with this, you see the thing with, they say, "Oh, we're the Skywatcher. We're making these contacts." Like in 2001, what happened, and this will be in this new article, what happened was they were out doing a war game scenario, and the war game was going on, and all of a sudden one of the camera guys came to uh, um, the James the guy that was running it, and he said, come take a look at this. And they had discovered these six UAPs that had appeared, and they realized immediately, I think the right scenario was that whatever they were doing had attracted these UFOs. So from 2021 to 2022, they ran another war game. They tried to figure out what is it that we're doing that is attracting these UAPs. And in 2022, they attracted 250 of the same UAPs. So that's how the dog whistle thing got going, is the phenomena had been attracted to whatever signal they were putting out, whatever they're doing, whatever war game. So they did the same war game, exactly the same they did in 2021. They got 250. But what you got to remember is, as they said, the phenomena cajoles you, it lies to you, but it'll never take you home to meet the parents. So the phenomena, it's like you got the idea they're bringing them in and they're landing. No, they're bringing them in, but no UFO has been within 5 kilometers. So the
Mhm.
phenomenon is sort of out there. You can sort of see it. You can sort of get a foggy picture through the camera. You can't really see it with your eyes. Or if you go in the air, it's invisible in the air and stuff like that. And it's playing this game. It's appearing as things, but it's staying far away. It's not coming in and landing. And according to Semivan and according to a number of major researchers, it's not going to land. That's not what it's here to do. If you're sitting there hovering for 2 hours, you realize it's not a plane, it's not a star, it's not this sort of stuff. And it gets the awe and curiosity and makes you wonder what the hell's going on? Why is this thing hovering for 2 hours? And the question is, why would a UFO fly by? Because that's all they're doing. They're not doing anything. They just fly by, they hover, they do weird things, and they get you people cameras and they bring more cameras out. And that's what's going to happen with the Skywatcher. You're going to get more scientists and more scientists. And that's the way they do it. They drag the people in, and eventually 95% of the people will all come to the right conclusion as to what's actually going on.
And maybe that's their only agenda, anyways. And also, it really makes you think because, of course, like, most people, and especially 10 or 20 or 50, 40 years ago, when you see a UFO in the sky, even if I remember my sighting in 2012 was just a ball of light, but it came very close to me, like within 50 feet. And I just kept thinking, like, how are there two guys, two guys sitting in there? Like, how are the beings
Yeah.
fitting in this thing? And it turned around and I could see like lights on the back, but I kept thinking, like, trying to figure out in my head like how big the object was, because it's so hard to tell if it's just light. But that's your initial assumption, is that there's like two little beings or whatever, like, there's a
Yeah.
being sitting in there. And so that's the whole thing, that these days I think a lot of people are also to the conclusion that there's probably not actual beings sitting inside there. It's not like it's a spaceship with a little light gray alien sitting inside it. It might just be, again, like we were talking about before, a reflection of our consciousness, whether it's a thought form, we're creating it, it's just a reflection of what we want to see, kind of thing. Or they're sending out a probe, like maybe it is a UFO, and their probe is just like a little like controlled ball of light that can, gather information or whatever. But it's also making you wonder about that. Like, what exactly is it? Like, what is the alien in it? Is there an alien? Is the alien controlling it? Do they even know about it? Are they responsible for it? Or is there even an alien, right? Is the trickster, is it a phenomena that is not actually even alien at all? Or is it something otherworldly, like literally otherworldly, and they live on another planet, kind of thing? Like, what is the phenomena?
Yeah, well, you had a comment there that came about this ball in Colombia. Mention that, and I'll make a comment, because that's the whole thing. You have this little ball, and there's definitely nobody in it. I mean, so to describe this ball, what's it called?
I think it's called the Buga sphere, and they found it in Colombia. And it fell down to earth, and it seemed to be a very small, like sphere that had writings on it. It looked like little tiny triangles and like crescent moons, kind of like a signia kind of on it. But it had also it didn't look like rivets. I don't know what it would be called, but it had like a circular. The circumference had kind of a thing that looked like you could just screw it together, kind of thing. But it was a ball that was flying, that someone had pictures of flying and then fell to earth, and they went and they're trying to get their scientists
Yeah,
to
which
investigate.
may be again like a gifted thing because you're the one that discovered. Remember, we were at James McDonald's collection in Tucson, and you discovered this object, which was like a spike made out of 99% nickel.
A
And they
photo of
actually
it
sent
in
it to
the
the
archive.
nickel company, and they said there was nothing in the sky of that purity in 1939. This thing just came zipping down into this farmer's yard. And then
Yeah.
he gave it to his daughter, remember, in Tucson, and they took it to NASA, and McDonald was involved, and they didn't even know. It was a report. They didn't say it was a UFO or whatever. It's just this weird thing. And we now know this as, these balls are the things they drop that they, the pieces of metal. That's why I always say, like, I mean, if they come from across the galaxy, do you actually start to believe that little pieces start falling off the thing about the size of your thumb? This is crazy stuff. So you talked about this ball in Colombia, and this is like an old story. It's like, again, if you know the UFO history, you realize this is not the first time, this is not the first rodeo. They had one called the Bates Ball. This is 1975. What had happened is the National Enquirer wanted to get the top stories for UFOs. So they put out $1 million reward if you can produce evidence of a UFO. And of course, they found this ball in Florida, and it's called the Bates Ball. I guess the Bates family or whatever found this thing, and they took it to the National Enquirer for the $1 million reward. And so I was good friends with Bob Pratt from National Enquirer at the time because he'd been to Manitoba twice to do the Charlie Red Star story. And he was telling me about this ball, that they had this ball and they had a 12-member panel and they were looking at this thing or whatever. And they had x-rayed it and there was something in it. And that's as far as it went. They've never cut into this ball. I think it's still around. And they never got the $1 million reward for it. But I remember when we were doing the Charlie Red Star thing, we did in 1975, there's the big objects flying around. But in 1976, we suddenly discovered these objects on the ground. And then people don't realize. We say, oh, they're orbs. There was no such word, as far as I know, there's no such word as orbs in 1975. We called them ground lights. These ground lights, they would sit on these abandoned roads, these mile roads that would run all the way into the United States, every mile that have a road. And we were watching these things, and we thought it was a baseball because we knew it was small. It was sitting there, and we couldn't tell because we thought maybe it was a quarter mile down the road. It was sitting in the middle of the road, and it wasn't as wide as the road. We just sit there, and you'd drive up, and it would keep moving back, and then you'd go the other way, and it would follow you back down the road, and then we'd push it down the road, and then I would jump into the ditch, and I'd lie in the ditch, and then the car would come by, and we'd figure this thing would fall by, and I'd watch this Bates ball go by. And I remember when we had the one at the bridge where we filmed this thing with an 8 millimeter movie camera from about 50 feet away. I remember it was sitting there, and we went up on the bridge, and then it was gone. And I said to my friend Jim, I said, Jim, it's got to be under the bridge. And it's one of those Bates balls. It's one of those Bates balls. And then I actually went there during the day, and they'd have these. There was nothing on the road, so there was an abandoned barn there. And I went into the barn. I figured it's got to be hiding in the barn here. So during the day, I'd go and I'd check the barn, and where's this Bates ball hiding? So this is an old story. And same when we had in '76 when the object, and I said the object can change during the sighting because in 1976 I had these kids in the back seat of the car. There was 5 kids that I brought there, and I was showing them these ground lights that were there, and we were flashing lights at them, and they would flash back. There'd be 2 of them, and one would do the tricks, one would just sort of dim down, and the other one would do whatever tricks. It would fly back and forth, up and down, and stuff like that. And that was the one when I flashed the light at it 3 times. I took the second kid out, flashed the light at it 3 times, and it flashed back, and the kid went, "Oh my goodness!" But it was when it flashed back, it made this whistling, beeping noise. It went, "Bzz, bzz, bzz," and I go, "Oh my God!" And I realized it was just a little tiny object, and I said there couldn't be anything in it. And now I've pissed it off, and now the big one's going to come. And then I looked up on the horizon, and this big arc welding light is on the horizon on the American border, and it flew along, and it came, and I was just petrified. And it came, and it sat over top of the car. But when it came on top of the car, it was no longer this arc welding light thing. So you see the object and you think that's the object. And then when it came over the car, it was a triangle. And it was a triangle with 2 red light, giant 5 foot wide lights on the side and a green light on the other end. And it had the flat end, it was flying towards us. And it was close. I mean, it was the entire field of vision in the binoculars. So that's the whole thing. The phenomena, it morphs, it's playing around, and it dragged me in, and it's dragged me in for my entire life. And you're dragged in, and everybody finds that once you see this thing, rather than having an opinion, because you can go to academics. And as I've warned before, if you bring in an academic who's never has no experience with the UFO thing, it makes no sense. It's like when I was at the university, I ran at one point I ran all the buildings for the science, and I know that the people from the Parker building from chemistry never went into the Buller building where the biology was. They went to the university center to eat or whatever, and back to their chemistry building. That you're in your own little world, and these scientists don't talk to each other. So if you're like the plant science guy, he was arguing with me, and he comes into UFOs, he has no clue what he's talking about. He's good at one thing, and that's what we got to realize is that I think we have something to contribute in terms of the field, especially when it comes to understanding that the phenomena is morphing. And that's, I think, even the UFO community does not really realize that fact, that the phenomena, as I keep saying, in 1975, the phenomena was not what it is now. It's a completely different world, and the completely different stuff. Even the landings, where people talk about landings, people in the UFO community, I think, really don't realize there has not been a UFO landing for 25 years. It used to be in this book, I think they're looking at 200 cases of landings in Europe. They were evaluating where the marks were, all this physical evidence and stuff like that. And it doesn't even happen anymore. They don't land anymore. They don't have the little guys running around with little rods and, with bubble helmets and stuff like that. It's a completely different world. And people have to realize the phenomena is morphing. It's changing. It has this ability, and we have the same ability to change and become whatever we want. They just have a better understanding of how to come from their world and appear in the physical world, slow down the consciousness, or however they're forming the physical world. Like my grandfather, they can come from the spirit world into here. And if my grandfather can come into here and appear as physical, these aliens who may be a million years ahead or whatever they are, I mean, imagine what they can do. They just understand that world that vibrates at a higher frequency than we vibrate at. And so maybe we can even talk. I sent you that video of Richard Feynman, who is considered to be, a lot of people consider him the smartest person of the 20th century, talking about reality. So maybe I can pull that video for you, and we can sort of play the video and then talk about this idea that you and I have talked about many times, about the idea that when you're looking at stuff, there's no physical world out there. This whole idea that if you start to realize, and this is not me and woo-woo world talking about, this is Richard Feynman talking about this whole thing about, if you understand, and he was not a UFO guy or even he was a straight materialist. And even he said, you got to be in awe of the world when you realize what's actually going on, how you see stuff, and the world is actually out there. You have no clue of what you're looking at, that it's not the world you think it is. And this is a real heavy scientist talking about this, that he'd suddenly come to this realization and talked about it. So I'll leave it at that. If you got a last comment, and then we maybe shut this one down.
Yeah, I agree. I want to talk about that. Maybe we'll do that on the next one.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thanks for the conversation, and thanks to everybody for listening. And if you have any questions that you want, we're willing to answer the questions, and hopefully you pick up some stuff and share it with other people, because that's how consciousness rises. That they want people to talk about it, they want people to argue, they want people to fight about it, and the more we fight about it, the more viral it goes, and the more people listen. And that's what basically happens. People don't realize that their views are changing as it goes along. People just don't really question it; they accept it, and eventually people are going to learn what this is all about. But it's going to be a long process, and it's controlled by the intelligence, not controlled by us. They are in control of disclosure. They appear as whatever they want. They've upped the ante, and it seems like we're sort of close to a breaking point here, where they're doing more and more, like where they go to New Jersey, 100 drones or 100 drones over these ships and stuff like that, where they're upping the ante. They're making it more dramatic and more dramatic, and wanting more attention. So thanks for the conversation.
Good. Thanks, Grant.